Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Where Work Meets Life. I'm Dr. Laura, and I'm here today with Pam Buchanan to talk about soul health, why it matters more than ever for a thriving workplace. So people come into my life for various reasons, and Pam is one of them. I believe that we're kindred spirits when it comes to the evolving world of work and human connection. I was intrigued by Pam's deep and extensive experience in corporate America, with working with tech and business titans, yet now she's 100% focused on integrating a new yet old and timeless topic into workplaces, and that is soul health. I truly believe soul health is the answer to the mental health crisis we're in. I did a podcast episode recently just about that. I believe all the polarization and fear that is plaguing our world today needs to be solved through more focus on the soul. So, Pam Buchanan is the founder of Quantum Sense. She focuses on the intersection of corporate prowess and soulful innovation. How cool. So she brings 40 years. She's worked in pivotal roles in the Nasdaq with titans like Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg. So she's worked with the big titans, and she's worked in that modern go corporate world, but she felt that it was missing a fundamental component of success, and that is soul health. And she's done a lot of research and brought a lot of new concepts and frameworks around how can we integrate more soul health into workplaces. Is it neuroaesthetics, sound engineering, other ways? But it's all about looking at the soul as the gateway to our senses and how our work and life can be more soulful. So welcome, Pam.
Thank you so much. I really am excited to be here and have a conversation around this. And thanks for the intro.
Absolutely. So beyond, what I said, my fumbling intro, I want to know from you. Please tell us a bit more about yourself and what you are most passionate about in 2025.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, as you said, I lived in corporate America for 40 years. Hard to believe it flew by so quickly, not without its trials and tribulations. But after retrospect and leaving corporate America, I wanted to do something a little bit different and really uplift the environments that we work in because it's so competitive. It's so go. And as I said, time goes by in a blink of an eye, and then you're exhausted and you're like, what happened? There were some joyous moments, there were some struggles, but, did I take that all in and really enjoy the moments that I was presented with? And I have to say, it was a blur sometimes because, again, it was just so pressure cooked, whether it was, winning companies to list on the Nasdaq, or even in the previous life I lived with asset management and getting shelf space for the products that I worked for. So I wanted to, really dig deep and say, okay, what is missing in corporate America? They have so many programs that, support the employees, yet employees walk away dissatisfied or unfulfilled. They have health programs, right? Physical health programs, for the body, they have exercise memberships and, nutrition support. And then they have for mental health these days, they even have, mental health days booked into, your vacation days. And then obviously the insurance now covers, mental health support. So what was missing? And I really came to the conclusion that it's the soul, because we are mind, body, and soul. But what is the soul? It's not just, meet your soulmate and go off and live the fairy tale life. It's a part of your being. And, but how can we get in touch with that a part of our being? Because you can't see it. With physical health, we can all see our physical bodies. We all know about our organs. If someone had a heart attack, you can visualize the heart, mental health, even now that it's talked about more, people understand, it's depression, it's anxiety. But when you say soul, people are like, is that religion? It's not religion. I say, if you had a heart condition, would you go and leave your heart at the doctor for a week and come back? No. So why have we left our soul? Let's say you have a religious practice and you say, I'm taking care of my soul through that practice. Why then aren't you just doing that once a week? It's a daily nurturing of your soul. It's part of you. It belongs to you. It doesn't belong to anyone else. So that's where I started on my journey from, the hustle and bustle of corporate America, to, really trying to empower the employees, leaders of corporations to take a look at what is missing. And I say that is the soul, and coined it soul health.
And I think you're bang on. And mental health very much is the brain and the emotions, basically. It's the combination of brain and emotional health. And you're right, we're three-part beings. We're mind, emotions and brain, mind, body, and soul. But soul has been lumped with religion. And it's one of those topics, just like mental health was 25 years ago. If you talked about, I need a mental health day, people would think you were nuts. And I think it's the same thing. I think you must be getting reactions saying, soul, oh, she's gone down the woo woo path.
Absolutely. I mean, it is, I'm so familiar with it, and then meet people like yourself that understand it. And there are so many people out there that want to steer away from that because they say, oh, we don't want to touch on religion in the corporate workplace. And I say, this isn't about religion. If you want to use that as a tool to support your soul, that's fine. But I have other tools that support the soul on a day-to-day basis. And I start with the senses. And that's why I start with the senses, is because it's relatable to most people, right? We all know about our five senses. We learned from the kindergarten on what the five senses were, and it's individual to each person. So let's ground ourselves in our senses, look up and out. I say, let's lift our head up, let's look out and look at the environment around us. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you smelling? It's so important. And we automatically assess the environment in milliseconds through our senses, but are we paying attention to that? Are we doing that with intent? So let's start doing that with intent. How about that brown couch in your living room? Well, it doesn't, brown's not the most energetic color. And yeah, I got it for free from grandma. But yeah, when I walk into the house, it kind of is a downer. Let's remove that brown couch and put a bright, cheery color. Let's say red or yellow, like you and I have on today. It brightens the mood, and color vibrates. And what are the walls? What colors do you have on the walls? And what light are you filtering into your workspace? So I talk about the workspace environment as well as your home environment. Both are very, very important. And let's access those through our senses with intent, because a lot of people do say also, oh, the senses, they're automatic. I don't need to pay attention to those. But yes, you do. Yes, you do. And you'll find more enjoyment when you do. And you'll be in the present moment. We're running so fast. I think this is one of the programs that can really anchor you in the present.
Is being aware of your senses and your environment. And is that one of the main focuses of Quantum Sense, your business?
Yes, it is. It is. I have a 3-step program. It's ground, elevate, evolve. But I do say I spend a lot of time on the grounding part. Most people are not grounded. And again, it's very normal to run into people that aren't really grounded in themselves, first and foremost, right? So, do you know yourself at a deep level? And that is knowing your soul. So is it soul fulfilled? I think that's what's missing in corporate America. Let's assess, the people you work with, whether it's your manager, whether it's your colleagues, the walk to work, or, the surroundings that you walk into, the smell, the sound. So you find more and more aesthetics being paid attention to, especially with the go back to work trend now, is employees are trying to look at the environment that they're putting their employees back into. And it's really simple. Some people say, well, that's so simple. It is. Then why are we missing that simple part? As they say, it's not rocket science. No, but it's essential. Why are we jumping to the rocket science when we haven't really taken a look at ourselves in the simple ways that we can provide, a grounding presence for all of those around us? And you know how you walk into a room, and if someone's not grounded or, has that off energy, you notice that. So it's, again, the whole team should have a grounding practice. And whether you want to incorporate that into the morning ritual, with something that pops up on the screen. I've had a company do that, with just little reminders that, welcome today, what is surrounding you? Is it the vibrant colors? Tell us what colors are exciting you today. Something as simple as that, or just really, encouraging employees to take that moment to pause.
Yes, absolutely. Because, like you said, we're running and we're running fast at high speeds, and our heads are exploding with constant thoughts and constant things are coming at us. Bombardment of media, social media, workflow, work overload is a huge systemic issue that I see.
Absolutely. And you can't function when you're kind of on that treadmill, consistently, right? You can run, fast for a few minutes, but then you're going to exhaust yourself. And let's say you're productive for an hour of the day. Well, what about the 7 other hours? You're kind of discombobulated in that. So, and we all go through phases, right? I say, let's live through our soul versus our ego. So, are you ego driven? Are you soul driven? And ask yourself that, whether it's every hour, was that interaction out of my ego and it was a tense interaction, or was that a soul driven conversation? Even if it was, I don't want to say a disagreement, but a difference of opinion. How did we approach that? So that's also one thing that I incorporate is, what are the interactions like? Again, let's go back and really assess that at a basic level.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I would argue that ego is one of the biggest challenges facing today's workplaces. I see a lot of leaders that get led by ego. And that's why I have the book No Ego beside me. I really feel like our ego is something that is separate from our soul, and we need to look at it as a thing and examine it and be aware of it and bat it down at times, push it down.
Well, and that's why we need to name it, right? Let's start naming it, whether it is, soul versus mind versus body, whether it is ego versus soul. Let's start putting names to this so then it draws our attention to that. And then when you name something, you can see it more clearly, because I think one of the reasons that soul has not been studied outside, let's say, religious practices is because it is invisible. It's not tangible, right? So let's make it tangible. How are we making the soul tangible? And again, if you can incorporate a sense inspired, whether that's workplace, whether that's the way you live day to day, but what is inspiring you and to thrive versus survive? That's another thing to bring to your attention. Is this a survival moment or is this a thrive? And at this point in time, we should all be thriving.
We should, but we aren't. Which brings me to my question. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing today's workplaces in corporate America and beyond?
The world is moving so fast. So with the integration of AI and every business, like trying to wrap it up so quickly, right? And be the first to market or provide these tools that will make their workplace more efficient. I think there's some stress involved in that. So it feels like it's amped up because everyone knows the workplace and the world is changing. So with that, it's automatic to create a little bit more tension because we're unknown about what the future looks like, because we're really entering a new paradigm. And so with that is excitement, but then also there is the stress of what will that look like. So I say, let's again take a step back and ground yourself. That's why these grounding practices are more and more important, and to touch base with the human element of what we bring to the workplace, right? Like, no, your job, probably is going to be enhanced by AI, not taken away from it, because there still needs to be that personal interaction. So are you coming about your workplace? Are you opening the door or turning on your computer in an automatic stress mode? How can you change that? And you're the person responsible. If everyone took responsibility for how they entered the workplace, and let's say they all wanted to be in thrive mode, in soul mode, wouldn't that uplift the whole energy of the company?
It really and truly would. I believe that 100%. But I think that the whole soul concept, it's not science. And I think the world of work is very based in the scientific model, which has its place. But I just wonder about quantum physics and your quantum sense, the name of the company, and how you see the quantum integrating into being studied more.
It is being studied more. And that's the new science, if they want to call it that. It's ancient science, but let's call it the new way of looking at life is in the quantum, right? In the quantum physics, in the quantum biology. How are we connecting our bodies together? And again, there's more and more studies with the neuroscience, right? Like, we're studying our brains a little bit more. We're studying our nervous system a little bit more. And that is going to filtrate, unless you're in the healthcare industry, it still is going to filtrate into your workplace, because we're understanding ourselves at a higher and deeper level. That's what quantum means. Quantum is a higher energetic way of looking at life. And we're going into the quantum. And whatever word you want to put in front or back of quantum, like I said, quantum sense. Why I said that is because it starts with your senses and ends in the quantum.
Fascinating.
So yeah, there's a lot of science that goes into that, and that even goes in, as I said, like biology and the foods you eat and how we interact. It really is interacting with nature and our physical selves, right? It's the interaction of how we approach, again, the environment around us. And let's look at nature and how other species interact, whether that's your pet dog, whether that's the bugs on the ground. But let's take more of an interest in things like that. It's not going backward, it's really pushing us forward to take another look at it. We're all starting, I don't want to say from the basics, but we're literally, let's all shed what we were taught and go back to the basics and learn it in a different way.
Fascinating. So, when it comes to applying neuroscience and sound engineering, how are those things key to workplace well-being? And give us the extremes. Like, what would be the opposite of that, and how would it damage us if we were in an environment that had poor sound and, was bad for our brains? And give us some description of that versus its opposite.
Great question. So that's why it is so important to look at what is in the environment, whether it's, let's even not talk about the sound yet, but smell. You know how you walk in and your employee, one of your colleagues has some Chinese food or food that is a little bit smelly, right? And you're like, oh, I wish he didn't eat, that, in the middle of the workplace, right? So sometimes, employees say you can't eat at your desk. And one of the reasons why is the smell affects each person differently. Think about it. Some people may be energized by that smell, or, hey, listen, I'm going to run out and get some Chinese food myself, or they will retract from it. And what mood does that put them in? that automatically sets your system off to go into whether it is survival mode, whether it is a fear-based mode, but your senses calibrate with the nervous system to then have you act out in a certain way. I'm not explaining that 100%, but it definitely affects your overall well-being is what I'm trying to point out. So then let's transfer that to sound, right? People in the workplace, usually it's really quiet or there can be noises around, people talking. You see more people with their headsets on. But sound is the purest form of a vibration entering into your ear canal. And I won't go into all the little nuances it goes through, but it directly affects your nervous system very, very, very quickly. So it either elevates or it de-elevates. So let's say that you're around, let's say the chatter of, let's say someone is in the next area next to you and they're chattering, chattering, chattering. I was involved in a situation in my workplace where some of my colleagues had to focus on editing news releases and they needed 100% quiet. So here I am talking to various clients. And then my colleague also, he liked to have the TV on next to him because he was watching the stock market. And that's what he was used to keep him focused. Well, there was an imbalance in that environment. And so how do we solve that environment? Do you provide headphones for those that are, again, having to focus on very detailed work? Do you put the people that have to interact and talk on the phone or are listening to some news clips, do you put them off in a different area? But why do you put them side by side? So little things like that can't be ignored. So that's one example of just something that, again, the managers didn't pay too much attention to when they were, I guess, setting us up in this open space, right? That's why is open space really that productive? And open space was developed in the Silicon Valley, right, way because people were coding. So they didn't need to chat. So you could literally be sitting like on a picnic bench next to someone and you could focus on your coding and have the person next to you doing the same thing. No one was chattering. So then all of a sudden you bring open environment to be more efficient with the space, save money, and all of a sudden people are like acting like, okay, that person sits too close to me. That person, I can't stand the sound of his voice. He has to talk, to his friends or even to work associates in a loud voice. Can he not talk that loud? I mean, it brings up more and more discomfort, right? And then that gives the manager more things to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just one thing on top of the other, noise, sound, smell, temperature, right?
Temperature, yeah, absolutely. But and they weren't paying attention to the overall being of a person, right? Like, oh, let's just sit them next to each other. Well, maybe some people have space issues also, like, oh, don't get too close. You're interfering in my personal space. But yet we all, everyone is in this, like open architecture where we're sitting right next to each other. So what can I do about that? That's why I think the work from home resonated so much with people too. They wanted their own personal space. So how can we incorporate that into the workplace where a team of people can work succinctly together? And again, I think it does come back to looking at your sensory being, your soul being.
I do too. And I feel nature is an important part of all of this. So I feel having nature in your office, plants, views of nature, views of trees, water, and then spending time in nature are all important. Does that come up in your work and your research?
Yeah, it does. So absolutely, the green walls, if you will, are very popular now, where you literally have a wall that is plants and live plants. So whether you walk into a lobby, there could be a plant, a green wall. Whether you walk into, again, an open space that has some of these plants or plant walls, that is becoming, I don't want to say an easy fix, but something that is attainable quickly, right? Whether you bring in, plants and have various plants sitting around, or whether you do construct a green wall. But there's definitely science backed that green and the just again, we can go into the science of how plants interact with the human, and creating that peaceful place. But yes, that does absolutely add the value. And you see, some companies are making entire like forests, if you will, right? They're if they have the opportunity to redo their entire workspace, you can see them bringing in even larger plants like trees.
Amazing.
So, and where their employees, as you said, let's get outside, they can walk through either a park like setting or sit and enjoy a break in a park like setting.
I love it.
And I think you're going to see more and more of that. And that's on a bigger scale, obviously, yeah, and working with the architects and all.
Beautiful. So let's switch gears a little bit. So my research is on toxic leadership, and I'm sure you've encountered some of that in your in your decades in the corporate America world. But what I'm wondering is how you've encountered toxic superstars. So those who bring in money and bring in success, but they're really toxic to the people around them and the people under them, and they're problematic to people's well-being and to their souls. So what do you recommend organizations do to identify and address these types of leaders?
Yeah, that's a hard one from my perspective. I don't counsel on that typically specific individual, but I do say the entire team needs to partake in this more sensory study to calm themselves, because those toxic people are probably living through ego. They're living in survival mode. May be some bigger issues at play, but I definitely encountered that obviously in my decades of work. And back in the day, they really didn't move that toxic person on because they were producing the revenue, as you said. They were bringing in the money. So they may be, talked to at the HR level to, behave a little bit better in a certain way. They may have been moved from their, managerial responsibilities so that they don't affect too many people. But I will say, I think companies still struggle with that if it's just, especially if it's just one individual, but they don't realize that one negative can pull down nine positives, right?
Yes, one bad apple spoils the barrel, I like to say.
Exactly. So you can say, well, look at all these positive people we have. It must counteract that negativity or that toxicity, and it doesn't. What happens is the opposite. Then you have a whole team of toxicity, right? And they're put into survival mode, and then they won't produce at a higher level. So I find that no one pays attention to it unless there's a crisis. Like, let's say, five people leave and go find another job, then they realize, oh, I guess we do really have a problem. So I don't encounter that, again, as I said, in my this practice, but I definitely encounter that in just my typical, work life.
I bet you did. So, and this is what I'm tackling. So, wish me luck.
Yes, no, it's definitely a needed topic, and people, again, there's so many resources, but to help that person if they are toxic, but they have to be really committed to it.
And unfortunately, some of them aren't if they don't have any self insight and, the ego is fully driving the car. It's very difficult.
Exactly. And maybe I should start. That's a good good thing for me to think about. Maybe I should say this soul health work. I could work with some of your more difficult toxic individuals in the workplace, because that once you get to the soul level, which is all about love versus the fear, because those toxic people are living probably 100% in the fear mode, right? Instead of in, and people say, well, love isn't, in the workplace, but I say no. The love vibration is the highest, purest form of happiness and positivity. So that's why I coin it love versus any other positive word, if you will. But it is, again, love versus the fear. So do an assessment. You know, where do you think most of your employees lie, on the fear based side or on the love based side? And I bet they'd be surprised.
Absolutely. And you can see when they're in fear, when they're very cynical, very distrusting, very pessimistic. All of those things show me that there's a lot of fear there.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I want soul. It has been more difficult than I thought to get business, because I speak directly about the soul. And it's just not a common term that you see in business every day. And that's why I do try to say, no, it's a part of a person that they bring into work every day. You've tackled the physical, you wouldn't want unhealthy workplace. So you give them tools to keep their physical presence healthy. Why wouldn't you give them tools to keep their soul presence healthy?
Exactly. And I think you're just a pioneer in a way. You're ahead of your time with a very ancient concept. So it's like this has been around since the dawn of humanity, the soul concept. Yet to many, it's foreign territory or it's bucketed under religion. So I could see, yeah, I think we're ahead of our time talking about this. I think in a few years, it'll become more commonly talked about, just like mental health was.
Exactly. I mean, before you couldn't mention mental health, right? You couldn't say I'm depressed, or, my family life is causing some turmoil and I mentally can't focus. Or, how many of the younger generation, they all, oh yeah, I talked to my therapist today, or yeah, I'm on XYZ, antidepressant. It's really very normal in the culture, just to say, just like you went to the doctor to check out your sore throat. So I'm hopeful that that will be the same with soul. What are you doing for your soul today?
Yes, me too. Me too. So I want to just ask about this balance in the workplace of people and profit. So the work that you're bringing in with Quantum Sense is all about how do we help the people to be at their best and function and be well, which obviously impacts profit. But I feel like a lot of organizations focus all the weight on profit and not as much on people. And what balance do you think is needed between those two things?
That can be difficult depending on where the company is in their life cycle, as well as, where the marketplace is, as far as, the acceptance of their product. So again, if the company is in survival mode, that balance is very difficult to find uh, between profit and people, right? Because especially if they're a publicly traded company, you're graded, if you will, in the stock market based on the profit of that company and meeting quarterly expectations. So with that pressure and stress, it can cause a more toxic or ego driven environment. So it's hard to attain. That's where there needs to be some changes in just how companies are graded, if you will, in the stock market, in the public markets.
Yes.
Changes need to happen there first, because if a CEO was on a quarterly earnings call and said, oh, I focused on my people and I spent all this money on my people and they're all healthy and thriving, but oh, my product is not priced correctly, or the it's not a good time for my product to sell, so yes, my quarterly earnings are way down, they're not going to get a bump in their stock price because they focus and have thriving people, right? So that is the hard sell, if you will, to focus on people. But at the end of the day, we all know if you have thriving people, you will have a thriving company if you have the right product. And you can take into account, let's say Christmas trees aren't going to sell during the summer, right? So given the seasonal changes or whatever, but it's so important still to focus on the people that are coming in, and especially if you're interacting with customers, that they are in thrive mode, because that affects your sales as well. So it's easier for a company that again is facing the public on a daily basis to talk about work life balance versus a company that has a widget that goes into your cell phone.
Absolutely. Really, really well put. So, I want to talk about you, Pam, and what work life wellness means for you and how you incorporate soul practice into your daily routines, just so you can share a couple of ideas with our listeners.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, I have become very focused on making sure my habits or rituals that I'm putting into my daily life are consistent. And that's the hard part, is like, whether it is like taking a relaxing bath, every couple of days, instead of saying, no, I'm too tired to do that, I do it, because just that calming effect, whether it's the smells and the feel of the water, and the relaxing nature of that. Let's say taking a bath every couple of days, as part of your routine, that's so important, and it takes only a few minutes, right? It doesn't have to. I used to think, oh, that's so much work, to put healthy food into my, refrigerator, or to take the bath, or to, have the candles lit, that the smell is uplifting for me. So I would say it's coming home, lighting the candles, making it, an environment that is relaxing, not turning on the TV. I don't turn on the TV anymore. And back in the day, that's one of the first things you did. You turned on the TV. Not anymore. I don't turn on the TV. Instead, I focus on, okay, what's my sensory, being feel like when I walk into this room? And I have healthy food in my refrigerator. And again, that goes to the senses, right? The taste. Does it taste good? And I want everything going into, my body tastes good. Like I get joy out of that.
Absolutely. And not to rush your food in front of the TV, to actually enjoy it.
Exactly. Is it a green apple I like, or is it a red apple I like?
I love apples. Apples are so awesome.
They are awesome, but it's even as simple as that, right? Like, oh, I think I like Granny Smith apples better than I like, the red apple. So why do I buy the red apples?
I like Gala. Gala's my gal.
Gala, okay. So again, what are you doing for all five of your senses? And I try to focus on that when I'm at home in particular, but also during the workday. What's the lighting look like? Do I have a candle lit that energizes me? It's what colors are surrounding me? What color am I going to put on today? So it goes down to your wardrobe as well. And again, it's all energy. We're all vibrating beings, and everything we put into our, environment is vibrating.
And I believe that we're all connected in some way. So I think focusing on differences and hatred towards other groups, you're basically all connected as a human race through energy, right? Do you believe that?
Absolutely. And that's the soul. Everyone's soul is based in that love vibration. That's why if we could all get back to that soul person that we were born with, right? And you know how they say soul's purpose? Like what's your soul's purpose? We're all brought in with a purpose to serve, this world. And we each have unique skills. But at the end of the day, our souls are all seeking love and giving and all the positive things that you can think about. So, do you see a person at the physical level, the mental level, or the soul level? And I've been told I see a person and have been seeing people at this level for a long, long time. I tap into their soul because if you tap into a person's soul, it's all about the love vibration.
It really, truly is.
Really truly is. So as you said, doesn't matter whether, gender, race, age, any of that disappears when you tap into a person at the soul level. So again, how can you do that? Well, you can't do that when you're frenzied and,
Eye contact, a lot by looking in their eyes. I can tell a lot by the energy or aura that they have. And it sounds crazy, but it's true. It's true.
it is true. But what you're doing is you're pausing. So I talk a lot about pausing because we can't all do this in a rush, right? And so that again, how do you pause? You ground yourself in the present moment through your sensory being, right? Like you're like, okay, what's around me? I'm safe. Because that's what your sensory being says. I'm not safe or I'm safe. So we all have to feel safe so that we can present ourselves in that soul based way. And so, when you walk out your door, are you feeling safe? And some people, unfortunately, in our world today, you may not feel safe, but how can I put more and more things around me so that I can feel safe, so that I can present my best self?
Hmm.
So again, let's start taking a look at a person at the soul level and not at the physical or the because I are mental. And let's go deep because I do say at some certain level it's superficial, right? Like oh this, we're bombarded by all these images in advertising, right? Of these beautiful people and the perfect image of someone, and so you think, oh, that's the way people I should be interacting with look like. Well, no, the man on the street, even who is asking for money, maybe. It's still a soul. It's still a soul.
So, for people who want to learn more about this whole concept, do you have a book you recommend, or a couple of books, or a podcast?
Yeah. So I recommend a lot of books on my LinkedIn, but I one of the books is called Your Brain on Art by it's Ivy Ross and Susan gonna Magnuson. And that is a popular book now because it's like how, again, it talks about the senses, but it talks about incorporating creativity, curiosity, just art in general. How can we fulfill our lives with more of that? Because art, again, is the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right? So what you feel is this beautiful object, maybe someone else isn't as attracted to that, but they're attracted to some other beauty. And again, you're learning more about that person. And, let's all learn about each other and our differences. So that's one book that I do recommend.
Awesome. And my final question wrapping up here is, if you could have one wish for a better world of work, what would it be?
That we all start the day with Again, no expectations, but just meet people where they're at, and hopefully we can elevate the energies in that workplace and walk out that day feeling better about ourselves.
Beautifully put. Well, we could go on and on, couldn't we, Pam?
We could. I feel we're kindred souls, and I there's so much more that I could talk about. It's such a deep subject, right? And so I do encourage people, I love to have conversations, and I love to work with people, obviously, but even just to have a conversation, I'm happy to do that. And whether we start at the basics and then delve deeper, but it's hard to get into all the deep stuff in an hour conversation, right?
I know, but we'll share your website for Quantum Sense. We'll share your LinkedIn page if you'd like in our show notes. And this episode will, I think, help a lot of people and get people perhaps thinking more deeply about the bigger picture of life and soul. So for that, I'm really appreciative. Thank you for being here, Pam.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So I hope it does help a lot of people out there. And again, it's just the small changes that we can make, right? It doesn't have to happen in a big way. Let's just all focus on the small steps that we can take.
Starting by grounding in each day.
Starting by grounding. If that's the one thing you take away from this conversation, let's just all ground ourselves in our senses.
Beautiful. Well, I hope you stay well. Thank you for tuning in to Where Work Meets Life. If you found this content valuable, please rate, review, and share with others who may benefit. If you're struggling in your work life and need support, I offer coaching sessions. You can book a complimentary consult on my website. I'm also a passionate keynote speaker and would love to discuss your professional speaking needs. Visit my website, drlaura.live, to sign up for my monthly e-newsletter filled with tips and resources to help you stay well.